The former nanny of Prince William and Harry. The payout is over false allegations she had an affair with Prince Charles.
Even though more than 2 decades have passed since Princess Diana tragically passed away in a horrific accident in Paris, her name has never faded. On the contrary, the mysteries surrounding the life and death of the Queen of England continue to smolder in the hearts of the public, like a fire that refuses to be extinguished. The woman who once shook the royal family, challenged tradition, and awakened the hearts of millions across the world still haunts the generations that followed with questions that remain unanswered. Diana is gone, but has the truth been buried with her, from forgotten clues, hidden recordings, to a series of shocking revelations from former bodyguards, secret lovers, and even members of the royal family? Everything seems to paint a dark picture, not only of the fatal crash in the Alma Tunnel, but also of the shadowy forces operating behind the palace's glamorous facade. Who wanted Diana to be silenced forever? Was it an accident? Or an assassination disguised to perfection, and why? Even to this day, does the mention of her death send chills down Britain's spine, because the truth about Princess Diana is not merely a tragic chapter of history. It is a labyrinth full of traps, where each step deeper shakes public perception. And the biggest question has always loomed: do we really know the whole truth about that woman? Diana is gone. But has the truth been buried with her? That question has hung over the British conscience like a ghost for more than 2 decades until today. Because a silent witness, long thought to be lost to time and darkness, has unexpectedly decided to speak. Not a politician, not an investigative journalist, not a conspirator, but a small woman who once played a crucial role in the early years of Prince William and Harry's lives, the royal nanny. For 25 years, she chose silence. Not out of fear, but out of unwavering loyalty to Princess Diana and the British royal family. But in her words, staying silent for too long is sometimes the same as letting the truth be distorted. And now, in her 70s, she can no longer take that secret to the grave. Her voice trembled but remained firm as she recounted the night of August 31st, 1997, the fateful night that shocked the world when an urgent phone call woke the entire Kensington palace. The news of Princess Diana's accident hit like lightning. But what shocked her more was not the call itself, but the strange reactions of those inside the palace. Everyone acted like they were performing in a play that had already been scripted. Someone told me, "Stay calm, nothing is confirmed yet," while the phones kept ringing off the hook from embassies, TV stations, and hospitals in Paris. I'm not a fool. Something was very wrong. And then, when she asked to go to Diana's room, a space once familiar, holding memories of a devoted mother, the door was no longer open as usual. It took over 40 minutes before she was allowed in, with the excuse of security checks. But when that door finally opened, what lay before her was something completely out of the ordinary. Her room was strangely messy. Letters were scattered on the floor. Drawers were pulled wide open. A pen had fallen under the desk. On the bed, there was a half-written note to Harry, and the last line read, "You will understand why, Mummy," and then it stopped. There were no signs of a struggle or a break-in, but it felt like someone had already been there, had read something, had taken something before I could arrive. That letter, she said, was never seen again. The next morning, when she returned to the room, everything had been cleaned, as if the chaos had never happened. No one asked her opinion. No one mentioned the letter. And when she told a senior palace manager about the incident, the response was simply, "This is not something that needs to be discussed." For many years after that, she stayed silent, carrying the burden of that memory through every twist and turn in the royal family. But every time she saw William, or especially when she looked into Harry's eyes, she remembered that unfinished letter, remembered the things that may have been hidden that very night. One question continued to cling to her thoughts. Was it merely random chaos on a tragic night? Or was it the evidence of a meticulously calculated information control? She didn't say someone harmed Diana, but what she witnessed made every official denial seem fragile. Because if Diana was merely the victim of an accident, then why was there a delay in informing her two sons? Why did her personal letters disappear? And why were loyal figures like the nanny, those Diana trusted most, kept out of the loop? I used to think that staying silent was a way to protect Diana. But I was wrong. Silence only allowed others to distort her memory. These revelations aren't legal evidence, but they are like sparks thrown onto the smoldering ashes of doubt that the public has never stopped whispering about. Once again, Princess Diana's death becomes the center of attention. No longer just scattered speculation or wild theories, but the account of someone who had been close to the epicenter of it all. The moment this information began to spread, social media exploded. Many felt betrayed by a truth that had been buried for far too long. Hashtags like #Justice for Diana, #She knew too much, and #The letter too. Harry flooded Twitter and TikTok. People began digging up old reports, old photos, old footage, and many asked themselves, is it time for the UK to launch a fully independent investigation? However, skepticism was not absent. Some royal experts claimed this could be a memory blurred over time, or imagination woven from grief and emotion. But that doubt couldn't erase a growing shared sentiment. Something was hidden, and the truth about Diana has never been fully told. In the nearly 30-minute interview video, when asked why she chose this moment to speak out, the nanny simply gave a sad smile. "I'm not afraid of dying, but I am afraid the truth will die with me." And perhaps that statement was the bell toll that awakened a collective memory. A memory Britain has never truly dared to face in full, that Princess Diana, the most beloved woman in royal history, may not have passed away by chance, but rather was lost within a web of power, fear, and control that, to this day, no one has dared to name. As the haunting testimony of the nanny about that fateful night still echoed in the public's mind, she revealed yet another detail that thickened the air of suspicion. A small detail, but one that lingered like a ghost: the handwritten letter to Harry. She claimed to have seen it, to have touched it, just hours after receiving the news of Diana's death. But no one ever mentioned it again. No one acknowledged its existence, and 48 hours later it vanished. The nanny recalled that the moment she stepped into Diana's room at Kensington around 9 a.m. on September 1st, she immediately felt something was wrong. Not because of the crisp chill of a London morning, but from the overwhelming sense that the room had just been disturbed by unfamiliar hands. I'd been in that room hundreds of times. Diana was extremely tidy, every drawer locked. Personal papers always stacked neatly. But that day, everything was upside down. Letters were scattered across the desk, some hastily folded, others had fallen to the floor, as if someone had rifled through them in a hurry. The small cabinet where Diana usually kept her private notes was wide open. Most striking of all was the bottom left drawer where she kept her most confidential items. It was left ajar for the first time, with no explanation. Among the scattered documents, one piece of paper stood out. It didn't resemble the affectionate letters Diana used to write her sons. It wasn't sweet or tender with a line like "Mummy loves you," nor was it her usual kind of guidance. It was a short, hastily written, handwritten note, with a first line that sent chills down the spine. "Harry will know what happened if..." The line stopped abruptly. No period, no signature, no conclusion. The paper wasn't torn. There were no signs of ripping. It was as if someone had pulled the pen from Diana's hand mid-sentence, or she had been suddenly interrupted by something urgent. The nanny insisted she touch the paper with her own hands. She even intended to fold it and keep it safe, but was asked by a security aide to leave the room during a personal safety check. She didn't think much of it until 2 days later, when she returned to the room and everything was arranged perfectly, as if no chaos had ever occurred, and the letter was gone. I asked them. I said clearly, "Where is that piece of paper? I need to keep it for Harry." And they only responded coldly, "There was no letter. You must be mistaken." She wasn't mistaken. She was certain, and she wasn't the only one who saw it. Two other staff members, one who served as a secretary and the other a housekeeper, also confirmed they had seen a senior royal aide remove a stack of documents from Diana's room on the night of September 1st. They couldn't say for sure if it was that particular letter, but all agreed that removing undocumented materials immediately after an unnatural death was highly irregular in royal protocol. Another detail made things even more suspicious. That letter wasn't the only thing to disappear. The nanny clearly remembered that in the bottom drawer, there was also a red notebook Diana often used to jot down her private thoughts. That notebook was never seen again. It didn't appear on the list of declared personal belongings, nor was it returned to William or Harry. They can hide objects, but they can't erase my memory, the nanny said, her eyes burning with a mixture of anger and sorrow. Diana was trying to say something, and someone didn't want her words to reach her son. So the question arises, who entered Diana's room after her death? Who had both the authority and the motive to remove personal documents? Especially before an official inventory had been conducted. The palace offered no explanation for the missing letter. In later internal reviews, there was no mention, no record at all of that piece of paper. The only remaining evidence was the memories of those who entered the room that night, memories that became clearer over time, like a scar that refuses to fade. What made it all the more disturbing was this: the unfinished content of the letter was not just a mother's confession. It carried a sense of urgency, like a warning, a testament, or a secret that needed to be passed on. Diana, who had once openly feared that someone wants to get rid of me, appeared to be trying to write something crucial before it was too late, and that, perhaps, is what made the letter too dangerous to ever see the light of day. Could someone have deliberately erased every trace, not to protect the royal family's reputation, but to conceal what Diana wanted to leave behind for the world or for Harry? Ironically, Harry himself once said in an interview, "I always felt there was something my mother didn't get to tell me. Some mornings, I wake up with the feeling that she's still trying to send a message." That statement, once seen as a grieving son's reflection, now echoes like a voice from the past demanding the truth, from a single piece of paper, from an unfinished sentence, from a ransacked room once again. The death of Princess Diana is pulled back into the center of doubt. Once again, loyalty, silence, and power are weighed against a question that offers no easy answer. Was there something Diana wanted to reveal and never got the chance? That question now belongs not only to the nanny, or to the silent witnesses who once entered that room, but to an entire nation, to all the hearts that have never stopped mourning the woman the world called the People's Princess. Just as the suspicion surrounding the hidden letter had yet to subside, an even more terrifying layer was revealed by the nanny, a prolonged fear that haunted Diana before her death, a torment that no one could fully understand except those closest to her. And now, as the puzzle pieces slowly come to light, everything once dismissed as Diana's delusions or paranoia seems to be illuminating a chilling truth. According to Diana's sister, Sarah McCorquodale, in the final months of her life, Diana lived in a state of extreme vigilance, so much so that no one could convince her it was merely media pressure. "They're listening to me, Sarah. They know where I am before I even get in the car," Diana whispered over the phone one night in July 1997, while on summer holiday aboard a yacht with Dodi Al-Fayed in the Mediterranean. But the "they" she referred to wasn't just the paparazzi, something Diana was all too familiar with. This time, the fear was different. She was referring to intelligence agencies, invisible yet powerful forces she believed were capable of monitoring her every move, every call. At the time, Sarah thought her sister was under too much pressure. But even she later had to admit Diana was not someone who became paranoid without cause. Every time she said something was wrong, something truly was. And as an inseparable part of that fear, Diana began keeping a journal. Not just an emotional diary, but detailed records with names, dates, locations. A red notebook the same color as the letter to Harry that later vanished, and now that notebook had also disappeared without a trace. The nanny confirmed she had seen Diana carry this notebook in her handbag every single day. She never let it out of her sight. One time I asked if she wanted me to keep it safe for her, And she replied, "If anything happens to me, at least the truth is in here." What truth, no one knows. Because just 2 days after the crash, all of Diana's belongings were accounted for by a very small group of palace officials and security personnel. The red notebook was never made public. It wasn't on the inventory list. It was never returned to the family. No explanation was given. Exactly like the letter to Harry. Worse still, Sarah revealed that Diana had repeatedly felt her car was being followed, even when accompanied by bodyguards. On one occasion during a night drive, she reportedly asked her driver to switch cars abruptly, mid-route, because a black Range Rover had been tailing us since we left the hotel. She felt as if she was being hunted not by the press, but by someone in authority. This feeling of being followed continued throughout the summer of 1997, peaking just weeks before the accident. Notably, Diana became obsessively focused on checking her seatbelt every time she entered a vehicle. A close friend recounted, she would always pull the seatbelt twice to make sure it was locked properly. But on the night of August 31st, when the crash occurred, Diana was not wearing a seatbelt. A chilling coincidence, or had something happened that prevented her from fastening it? And if she had maintained the habit of checking her belt as always, why did she neglect it that night? Was there technical interference or something that stopped her from acting normally? But perhaps the most haunting detail is one particular warning, once dismissed as pathological imagination, that has now returned with terrifying weight. Diana once confided that she believed she would die in a staged car accident. This warning is no longer a rumor. It exists in a handwritten letter Diana sent to her former butler, Paul Burrell, in 1995, in which she wrote clearly, "This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous. Someone is planning an accident in my car brake failure and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for someone else." There has never been a reasonable explanation for the eerie coincidence between that warning and the circumstances of her death just 2 years later, exactly as described inside the Mercedes S280 crashing into a concrete pillar without wearing a seatbelt, resulting in a fatal head injury. All of this from the fear of being followed, to the missing diary, from the sudden break in her seatbelt habit, to the warning of a staged car crash, are no longer isolated fragments. They are coming together to form a chilling, panoramic picture. A picture in which Diana did not die in a random accident, but may have fallen victim to a meticulously calculated plan. She wasn't afraid of death, Sarah said in a brief interview after years of silence. She was afraid the truth would be buried. She was afraid her sons would grow up in a world that would never know what their mother fought for. Now, with the nanny's revelations, with Sarah's memories, with the warning letter, the vanished red diary, and the deadly coincidence between her premonition and reality, the public is forced to ask, is it time to revisit the question, can we still accept Diana's death as merely an accident, or is it time to confront the signs she left behind? Signs that were deliberately blurred over the past 2 decades. That question had echoed in her mind for many years. What was she trying to say before she died? A simple yet haunting question, whispered from the lips of a senior palace aide on that fateful night. To the nanny who stood beside Princess Diana through bitter years, that question was not just speculation. It was proof that the royal family knew more than what they had disclosed, and that Diana's death was not just an accident. According to her account, the palace was the first to be informed of the accident in Paris before the media, even before the Spencer family. But instead of immediately informing Diana's parents or her 2 sons, they chose silence. They delayed. The question is, why was it shock, lack of confirmation, or was there something that needed to be arranged before the world learned the truth? The nanny was summoned to the palace almost immediately, but was not allowed to meet Diana's relatives. Instead, she was led into a cold and unfamiliar room, where the only sound was the heavy breathing of people trying to appear composed. She recalled that throughout her years of royal service, never had she felt such an oppressive atmosphere. No panic, no tears, just an eerie silence, as if everything had been shortly after. A group of palace staff quietly entered the room where Diana's body was placed. They did not come to mourn or express grief. They came to rummage. According to the nanny, they brought briefcases, gloves, and a checklist. Some envelopes were open. Diana's personal items, such as notebooks, letters, and even the mini recorder she often used to document her thoughts, were all taken without explanation. No one cried. No one trembled. Every move seemed methodically planned, as if they had known this was coming. She said, "Oi," her eyes dry but her voice shaking with fury. She once thought it might have been the palace's way of dealing with a crisis, but the more she remembered, the more the details horrified her. As she was being led into that room, she overheard a brief exchange in the hallway. A man, seemingly of high rank, whispered, "We must control this story. We can't let her become a symbol against the monarchy." That sentence struck her like a dagger to the heart, this woman who had loved and protected Diana as her own child. But it didn't end there. After Diana was officially declared deceased, the nanny was asked to sign a confidentiality document, a pledge not to reveal anything she had seen or heard in the first 48 hours after Diana's death. No lawyer, no explanation, just a cold stare from a senior officer for the stability of the nation. Ironically, that very stability has turned Diana's death into one of the greatest mysteries of the modern era. And the nanny, who once believed wholeheartedly in the system, now lives tormented by the sense that she, too, became part of a staged concealment. The items taken that night were never returned. French police made no mention of them in official files. The Spencer family was never fully informed, and perhaps most heartbreaking of all, William and Harry, Diana's sons, seemingly were never told the full truth about what happened inside the palace when their mother passed. The question, what was she trying to say before she died, lingers like a ghost, not only in the nanny's mind, but in the hearts of everyone who ever loved the princess. Because if Diana did say something, a last message, a buried truth, or even a name, it could shatter the entire narrative the British monarchy has upheld for decades. Why the need to control the story? Why was it the palace, not the police, not the family that first knew? Why the rummaging in the room with her body, and why have these questions never been answered? Could it be that there exists a truth so enormous it could shake the foundations of a dynasty, and is that why the palace chose to erect a curtain where Diana is no longer a flesh and blood woman with sorrows, pain, and dreams, but merely a symbol to be controlled? The nanny didn't know exactly what had been erased that night, but she knew one thing for certain: they were afraid of her. Even after she died, they were still afraid of her. And perhaps that very fear is what made Diana immortal in the hearts of the public. Not because she was a princess, but because she was a truth someone has been trying to bury forever. Though Princess Diana is gone forever, the legacy she left behind remains ever present, vivid, and resonant like a tragic hymn echoing through the heart of England, and in every whisper among the people, in the admiring eyes of those who once met her, in the thousands of statues, photographs, books, and even in the flowers laid at the gates of Kensington Palace each year on August 31st, Diana never truly disappeared. She is still there, not as a shadow, but as a radiant halo, making anyone who tries to take her place seem small and pathetically pale in comparison. Camilla may now be queen. She may stand beside King Charles at grand ceremonies, smile for the press, wear glamorous gowns, and walk the red carpet beneath hundreds of camera lenses. But what she will never have, that is the unconditional love that the people gave Diana. That kind of love did not come from arrangements, from thrones or titles, but from compassion, from tearful eyes when Diana embraced a child with AIDS, when she knelt beside a soldier who had lost his leg, when she fearlessly walked into war zones to campaign against landmines. The contrast is too stark. One woman was wounded but still opened her arms to the world. Another entered people's hearts by grabbing and breaking. No matter how much charity work Camilla does, how gently she speaks, how frequently she appears, In the eyes of the majority, she remains the other woman, a title that cannot be cleansed by graceful gestures or diamond-encrusted crowns. Cold comments still surface whenever her name is mentioned. Murmurs still linger at ceremonies. And on social media, among thousands of tributes to Diana, how many truly mention Camilla without a hint of scorn, even within the royal family? Diana remains too large a shadow. William and Harry grew up with their mother's image in their hearts, though they have chosen different paths, one fulfilling royal duty, the other choosing a private life in America. Neither has ever hidden their love for their mother. William called her the guiding light. Harry even named his son Archie Harrison, meaning son of Harry, but observers believe it was also a subtle tribute to son of Diana, a silent remembrance. And Camilla. In private stories told by close insiders, she is always left outside the circle of intimacy. Her relationship with her husband's sons, though publicly painted with polite words, in truth still holds many distances. Because how could they forget? How could they erase the memory of a mother who once cried in the palace corridors, who was betrayed, who lived like a lonely shadow among a calculating family? How could they embrace the woman who tore away their mother's happiness without feeling their hearts crack? Perhaps, out of duty and maturity, they chose silence. But that silence does not mean forgiveness. It is merely a bitter compromise to keep the family from descending into chaos. And that is precisely what makes Diana's legacy even greater. She was not just a symbol of her time. She was the crack in the crown, the reminder that human hearts cannot be choreographed like ceremonies. While Camilla tries to win the public with the image of the king's loyal companion, Diana touches their hearts with raw truth. She once said, "I'd like to be a queen in people's hearts, but I don't see myself being queen of this country." And she did become that completely, without any pretense. Look at the recent surveys. Though nearly 3 decades have passed since her death, Diana's name still frequently ranks among the most beloved royal figures of all time. Her statues have been erected in many places, not to showcase power, but to commemorate a brave heart. The charities she once supported continue to thrive, even gaining more support after her passing. Every time William and Catherine appear, people glimpse traces of Diana in their gentle, approachable, and deeply humane demeanor. And Camilla, she may be the present of the throne, but Diana is the immortal soul in the hearts of the people. She was once called a troublemaker, someone unfit for royalty. But in the end, it was the monarchy that was forced to change to adapt to the image Diana left behind. The public demanded sincerity, transparency, and genuine connection. And for that reason, Diana's presence has never faded, even in an era where everything changes at lightning speed. Her name is still spoken in television programs, documentaries, feature films, and biographies. Her image with sorrowful eyes and a gentle smile continues to move people. And Camilla, even having climbed to the peak of power, still cannot surpass that shadow. Perhaps it is fate that there are those who, even living a full life, can never touch others' hearts. And there are those who, with just one outstretched hand, are remembered by the world forever. Diana was such a person. One true love, one real heartbreak, one time standing up for what she believed in. And from there, she belonged to history, not the history of the crown, but of the millions who cried for her, who felt seen and understood through her gaze. And so, even if people are forced to call Camilla Queen, deep within their hearts, that title belongs to only one person, the woman who died in the dark night of Paris in 1997, but never left the heart of Britain, Princess Diana, the eternal queen of the people. The biggest question to this very day still remains, why did Princess Diana die? And why did she die that way? Since the accident in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, a series of implausible, bizarre, and murky details have surfaced, like scattered pieces of a puzzle no one dares complete. The abnormal delay of the ambulance, the loss of radio communication at the most critical moment, The sudden malfunction of surveillance cameras in a central area of Paris in the middle of the night. A chain of accidents that eerily seemed like a deliberately orchestrated plan. And if it were all just an accident, then why were the last words firefighter Xavier Gourmelon heard from Diana, who was still breathing, when pulled from the wreckage they planned it? That statement, coming from anyone else, might be dismissed as a panic-stricken remark. But from Diana, who had once written a letter warning her lawyer that they will eliminate me in a staged car accident, it felt like a forgotten indictment. A piece of truth buried beneath cold reports in the dry conclusions of an official investigation. Not just one, but many signs were left by Diana. As if she knew exactly what awaited her. As if she sensed the breath of death lurking behind her, not a natural death, but an intentional plan by forces she could not fight. The mysterious white Fiat Uno, believed to have collided with Diana's Mercedes, was never found. The initial forensics report on Henri Paul, the driver, was said to be tampered with. Living witnesses who once dared to reveal unusual details either withdrew their statements or disappeared without a trace. Over 25 years have passed, but every time the accident is mentioned, it brings with it hundreds of new questions, and every answer only seems to blur the overall picture further. A nanny who was once close to Diana admitted that she knew Diana was trying to protect something, perhaps a terrifying, trying truth related to her sons. And Sarah, the woman who bears Diana's face, believed by some to be her secret daughter, believes the princess silently fought to keep the truth from being buried. But in the end, those in power were one step ahead. They buried everything, not just the truth, but the only woman who dared to challenge them. And somewhere in a history manipulated by others, Princess Diana was turned into a silent symbol, instead of a mother, a wife, a woman who once trembled as she signed the divorce papers in tears, who once desperately pleaded to be withdrawn from the glory that came with shame, who was cast out of the palace like a threat to the outdated structure of the monarchy. If she ever hoped to be protected, the truth is, no one did that. The story of Diana did not end in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, nor did it stop at memorials or statues. It continues because the truth has yet to be revealed, and because deep in the hearts of millions from Paris to London, from those who followed her on television to those who grew up with the memory of a people's princess, there remains a quiet whisper. Something was buried. Diana did not die in a random accident. That is what many believe, even though they have no clear evidence. And perhaps it is precisely because of the lack of concrete proof that this truth has been permanently imprisoned in classified files, in the averted eyes of those with decision-making power, and in the absolute silence of a force no one dares to name. Today, more than 2 decades later, Diana's legacy still lives powerfully in the hearts of millions. Not because she was a fashion icon, not only because she was the mother of 2 princes, but because she dared to live as a real human being, to love, to hurt, to rebel, to be wounded, and then to rise again by her own strength. She was the light amid the darkness of power, the voice among silenced conspiracies, the symbol of compassion and truth. But even light needs protection, and truth needs to be unearthed from the rubble. Do you remember Diana's eyes the last time she appeared before the camera? Still the same sorrowful gaze, but resolute, as if she knew something was coming, and no one could stop it. As if, through her very existence, she was sending a message beyond time. I knew they would do it, but I have no regrets, because I live truthfully. We owe Diana an explanation, but more than that, we owe her the truth. And now, it's your turn to speak. If you feel Diana's story has touched your heart, leave a comment with the number 1. If you have a different perspective or want to share a differing opinion, comment 0. The story is not over. And as long as we remember, as long as we keep asking questions, the darkness cannot hide forever. Click like, share, and subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the secrets that have never been revealed behind the glittering facade of the British royal family. Because sometimes, The truth is not in what's said, but in what's been deliberately hidden.